and we're recording. And I honestly have no fucking clue what I'm gonna talk about, but I'm just gonna run off the cuff. You know, it's, oh shoot, about to knock over the plants. I'm surprised, are these like, oh, they're bolted on, okay. Because I was about to say, I'm surprised these don't fall over with the wind and whatnot. You know, what I've learned since being out here in Colombia for 2 weeks is really that you have to get to a point where you can identify the loops and the patterns that are a part of your old identity that keep perpetuating situations. You know, a lot of times I talk on this channel specifically about entrepreneurship and shifting your identity when it comes to entrepreneurship, and how I started out as a freelancer, and it wasn't until I shifted my identity that I was able to walk in entrepreneurship and actually pursue and obtain the true freedom that I was looking for, financial freedom, location freedom, so on and so forth. But as I'm actually here in Colombia, I'm recognizing for myself that there are unconscious patterns and loops that I wasn't aware of that are starting to play out even here in a new environment. And I'm a whole complete believer that sometimes all you have to do is change your environment. A lot of times we have environments that are attached to certain identities, or I should say identities are attached to certain environments. So you may be in your hometown, right? And your hometown has a certain identity attached to it because that's how you've seen yourself for your entire life, right? And you don't like that. But every time you're in this environment, you tend to perpetuate the circumstances, the experiences, and the situations that are aligned with that version of yourself. And since coming out here to Colombia, I felt a complete shift and change in my identity, in how I was moving, right? And the first week was very, very strong, right? I linked up with one of the brothers from the Brotherhood. I linked up with my mindset coach and mentor, and everything was completely different. Everything completely shifted. I started taking new actions, having new beliefs, having new thoughts, all of these things, right? And this past week has been such an interesting polarity to it because I have been perpetuating a lot of old patterns that were associated with my previous environment and also just my previous paradigm and belief about myself. Pardon this plane that's flying over. That's one thing I will say about the areas I've been staying in. You typically tend to hear a lot of motos, cars, things like that, but you know, it is what it is. We're out here living, man. So I started to notice that these things were coming up, and it was really interesting to me because before I could identify it and actually become aware of it, I was caught in the loop. And I was telling my brother Noel this yesterday, that when things don't happen the way that you expect them to or the way that you want them to, it is in that moment that it's happening for a particular reason. And it's happening for a particular reason because it's there for you to identify the loop, right? A lot of times we want to have control over the how of how something is supposed to happen, of how something's supposed to transpire. We want to know everything, right? So when things don't go according to plan in terms of how we see them panning out, we start to create this loop in this cycle in our head to where we get into this survival state, right? Our nervous system starts to feel anxious. We start to feel unsafe, right? And that's what it is on a biological level. Our body and our nervous system starts to feel unsafe because we are no longer within how we expected something to plan out. But the actual issue with that is that you were expecting that external circumstance, experience, opportunity, whatever, to actually give you the safety that you were looking for, which means that you were still unsafe internally to begin with. And a lot of that is tied to your old identity. So you'll start to perpetuate these limiting beliefs, these thoughts, these negative connotations and perspectives about yourself that were a part of your previous identity or a part of your previous paradigm, or these things that you thought that you overcame, right? And that's when you begin to realize it's not just tied to the environment, right? Does the environment amplify or exacerbate the intensity and the frequency of them? Of course, because we associate certain things with certain environments, right? We associate certain smells with certain experiences, certain songs with certain feelings, nostalgia, right? So with all of these things, your brain has now wired a particular thought process, a particular pattern, a particular belief about yourself that has been attached to that environment. And when you leave that environment, there's still some of that stuff lingering in there because it's been so strong, right? And you may be able to get that initial breakthrough from whatever that is that's holding you back, that limiting belief, right? And I'll just be candid and honest. For me, a lot of it came down to the business and then also women as well. And in these things happening for myself and starting to play these loops that had been playing back when I was like in high school, right? Or, you know, when I had been in my first relationship, or I had been dealing with, you know, a particular girl early, right? And had these certain feelings of insecurity, or when I thought that I didn't know how to make enough money, or I wasn't capable of actually providing a result for my client because this was my very first client and I wasn't confident enough in myself and didn't believe enough in myself. These things started to play out, right? And it's so interesting because it's one of those things where that moment in which something does not go according to plan and that loop starts to happen, you have to be able to identify it. Once you can identify that loop, that's when everything starts, right? And that's when you can begin to acknowledge the actual reasoning behind why things are happening the way that they're happening. It's not that it's happening in the wrong way, or it's not that it's not going to happen, whatever it is that you're, you know, striving for, whether it is a certain relationship, whether it is more money, whether it is, you know, being able to go here, do this, do that, whatever it is.
Good, Pat.
It's not that it's not going to happen. It's more so the fact that we think that it has to happen a certain way, but in that instance, we begin to actually block the timeline and the path in which it is going to happen, right? Because we have created this idea in our head of how it's supposed to happen, but that idea of how it's supposed to happen is actually really attached to that older version and identity of ourselves that does not even feel safe receiving it. It doesn't even have the capacity to hold it if it were given to you right now in this moment. So it's so interesting how those things work, because when things don't go according to plan, that is when we start to panic, right? Our nervous system starts to feel unsafe. We start to get anxious. We start to have doubt. We start to have fear. And these are the things that can perpetuate these previous cycles, right? And these old patterns of thinking, of thought, of belief, of actions, to where now we are starting to sidestep our momentum and we're starting to get off track because we're getting caught up in that loop. But when you recognize that that actually happened for you to be able to identify the loop, right? It happened because those things needed to come up, because they were still buried beneath the surface, and they have to come up for you to be able to identify them, address them, dismantle them, dissolve them, and move forward. And actually be able to step into the newer version of yourself, how you see yourself, the identity that you have. And it's such a powerful thing, because once you can recognize that, you can actually take the time to sit down, reflect, ask yourself, okay, where is this coming from? What is happening? Like, what is going on right now? You know, why am I feeling this type of way? Why am I having these types of thoughts? Why is this coming back up? And then you can start digging deeper, getting more granular, figuring these things out, right? Okay. And then from there, you can acknowledge that that had to transpire that particular way so you could be aware of this blind spot and move past it. So that way you can find that chip or that chink in your armor and fix it. So that way now you are available to receive everything that you're going after, right? You have the capacity to be able to hold it. Because what I've recognized throughout my life, especially when it comes to money and when it comes to building my business, and you know, if we take it back more to the freelancer, entrepreneur, business building kind of side of things, what I've noticed is that I've been in a habit of making a lot of money, but not feeling safe maintaining or keeping that money. So there have been a lot of times and a lot of cycles where I've made a lot of money. You know, I've made a lot of money, high 5 figures, you know, high 5-figure months, you know, 6 figures in a couple of months, and yet still am living paycheck to paycheck, or still look at my account, you know, and I'm like, where did all this money go? Like, what the hell happened? You know? So I've noticed that that was a reoccurring pattern and a reoccurring theme that would happen for me. And this is something that I saw happen again, being out here in Colombia, right? The ideas and the beliefs and the patterns behind it, right? And I'm like, okay, I thought I had gotten over this. I thought that, you know, we were able to get over this, you know? I'm making more money than I was in the past, but why are these ideas, these loops, these situations still perpetuating themselves? And it allowed me to really sit back and reflect and ask myself, okay, what is it that is causing me to do these things? And I realized I'm still moving from a place of scarcity. I'm still moving from a place of fear, right? I'm still moving from a place of feeling like I'm not good enough to be able to get results for my clients, or I'm not capable enough to actually make an effect and making a change in someone's life through how I serve them. And that was something that I had to really, really drill down on and get deeper into and start to rework. But it had to happen, right? These experiences that have transpired within this past week, because the week prior was amazing, right? Everything was working, everything was moving, everything was smooth, everything was in sync, right? There were coincidences that were happening that were perfectly aligned with exactly where I want to go, and was just like giving me all the confirmation in the world. And then the week following, which is this past week that has just happened, is now I'm just perpetuating old patterns and old cycles day after day after day after day. And not even necessarily physically, but up here, right? Which are affecting my decisions, which are affecting how I show up for my clients, how I show up with family, with friends, with women, whatever the case is. And it comes down to the fact that once you start to really integrate into that new level, and once you really start to step into that new level and embody it, things are going to happen to expose those parts of yourself that you have not addressed yet. And they have to get addressed. They have to get exposed and addressed, so that way you can release them, dissolve them, dismantle them, move past them, or at least have enough awareness to detach from it and be able to make the conscious decision to focus your attention on what actually matters. Because I'm not gonna say this like it's just gonna completely go away, right? I'm not gonna say it like it's just never gonna happen. You know, no matter how much we grow, no matter how much success we achieve, whatever the case is, I still believe that there's going to be that part of you that has that doubt, that little bit of imposter syndrome, that, oh, am I gonna be able to do this? But it's not even about getting rid of that. It's about being able to have the power and the awareness and being able to make the conscious decision to move past it, to look at it and recognize it for what it is, which is really just a lesson to get you even further along your journey. And that was what this entire week has been for me. I'll be honest, this entire week, I have not been acting in alignment with what I know myself to be and who I know myself to be, right? I've been perpetuating old patterns, old paradigms, all these other things, right? Right after an entire week of just, you know, breaking my own mind, right? Having breakthrough after breakthrough after breakthrough and stretching myself so much further than I thought I was even capable of within just a week. Now, the following week, I'm perpetuating old cycles. I'm having all these other things happen, and this, that, and the third. But it had to happen. If it did not happen, I would not have the awareness, the clarity, and the vision. I wouldn't be making this video right now. Before even making this video, I was still feeling some type of way. I'm like, yo, what is wrong with me? Like, how am I gonna shake this funk that I'm in right now? And even though I had the awareness, the clarity, I would journal, I would write down, I would figure out all these things, I still had this feeling of like, yo, I don't want to do anything, right? I don't want to do any of the work for my clients. I don't want to make any videos. Today I'm supposed to be making videos for the rest of the month. And I was like, bro, I don't feel like doing any of that. I can't get in front of the camera because my energy is going to be off. But now I'm sitting here talking to you guys, and what's flowing through me is actually the energy of authenticity, because I'm able to actually sit here and talk to you guys and be real about what has been going on. And through that, I know that someone is going to watch this video and it's going to click for them. It's going to be able to make a real change in their lives. And it's going to be able to propel them forward the same way that this is doing it for me. So I just had to make that decision, right? It all really starts with a decision. And a decision does not necessarily mean an action. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but a decision does not necessarily mean an action. A decision is a declaration, if we can so say, right? A decision is you choosing to say, hey, I'm not going to subscribe to this limiting belief right here. I can recognize it for what it is. I can look at it and say, hey, this has taught me something that I needed to know in order to move forward. I recognize it, I acknowledge it, I'm letting it go, and I'm making the decision to subscribe to the belief that everything that I'm pursuing and everything that I'm going after is already going to happen. I don't need to know the how, I don't need to know the steps, but I trust that everything is going to unfold the way that it is supposed to. And whether you believe in God, the universe, whatever religion, whatever the case is, you need to have that trust and that faith that things are going to play out and that you are going to be able to receive what it is that you need to receive, through whether it's new ideas, thoughts, beliefs, whatever the case is, to be able to actually execute as it's supposed to happen and as it's supposed to unfold. So even in those moments where things are challenging, even in those moments where you feel like you kind of hit a wall, or you feel like, man, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where to go, right? In that moment, you have to make that decision to say, okay, first let's seek awareness so that we can get the clarity. If we can seek awareness and we can gain the clarity, then we can figure out what alignment looks like. And then if we can figure out what alignment looks like from there, all we have to do is make that decision to stay aligned with that in our belief, right? To make that decision to say, hey, I know everything is going to work out. I know I'm going to be back here permanently very soon. I know my business is going to be doing 100K a month in the next 6 to 12 months. And I'm not going to have to be doing the operations. It's going to be able to run effectively without me having to be there. And I'm in the process of building these things, right? Which is why I resonate so much with a lot of freelancers or early entrepreneurs who are starting to have some success, but they feel like they're burnt out. They don't know where to go. They feel like they're trapped. They're making a good amount of money, but they feel like they're trapped, because I was in that same space. I was in that same predicament, in that same environment. And now that I'm moving past that, I'm moving outside of that, there are a lot of uncomfortable things that I did not address in those moments that are now starting to come up as I'm embodying a newer version of myself. So you have to be able to step back and look at things from a broader perspective. You got to kind of be able to step back and look at it like, okay, this is the roadmap right here. I'm in this particular point right here. I know this is exactly where I want to be. What is this particular moment in the process, in the journey, trying to teach me? Because if we solely focus on the end destination, if we solely focus on achieving the success, achieving this accolade, doing this, doing that, and we're not really present in the moment, we're going to find ourselves perpetuating a lot of cycles that we thought we had gotten over, we thought that we were done with, right? And it really does take a sense of understanding and being able to sit back, reflect, detach from all of these things in order to be able to fully step into that. And I think once you can do that, things start to flow, right? Things start to flow. And there are a lot of instances where in my life I've tried to force things, right? I've tried to force things, whether it was with relationships, whether it was with business, whether it was with whatever. There have been a lot of instances where I tried to force things to evoke a specific outcome. But when you recognize that the moment you focus on building yourself up internally and cementing that belief within yourself of the fact that what I've already asked for, what I've already put out is going to happen, and I just have to continue to focus on building and cultivating that up within myself, that everything else is going to lay out how it's supposed to, then that's when you can release that anxiety, that overwhelm, that nervousness, that stress, right? And that's not to say like stop doing what you're doing. That's not to say like, oh, stop putting in the work, stop putting in effort. No, we as entrepreneurs, as, you know, high performance individuals, we're gonna have to put in the work. We're gonna have to do what we know we have to do. We're gonna face challenges. We're gonna have to overcome things, right? But when you take so much pressure off of yourself to have to figure out the how and figure all these things out and say, hey, all I have to do is make the decision and everything else will flow from that. I'll be able to receive the thoughts, the ideas, the inspiration, the game plan, the actions that I know I need to take, the opportunities, if I make the decision to truly believe that what it is that I'm pursuing is going to happen, and be ruthless with cementing that belief, and also be ruthless with acknowledging when those limiting beliefs pop up and letting go of them. I think that's the biggest thing, because I could have caught myself in a back and forth, right? I could have caught myself in a back and forth. I'm going back to DC on Tuesday. And if I would have just stayed in this mental loop, in this headspace right now, I would have gotten back to DC and brought all of that with me. But now that I've recognized that this was supposed to happen, all of these things that have transpired were supposed to happen, right? Every single thing was supposed to happen. So that way, when I do go back home, when I do go back to DC, I have that awareness, and it's not going to trip me up and end up delaying the timeline on which everything is supposed to happen. Now that I have the awareness, and now that I can make the decision, I can say, hey, okay, when we get back to DC, we already have a game plan. We already know we're gonna be back out here sooner than we think. We already know the business is gonna scale to 100K plus a month over the next 6 to 12 months. Yeah. We already know that the impact that we're going to have by making videos like this is going to truly impact people, and is going to truly expand people's perspectives and give them the ability to do the same thing, right? All I'm doing in this video is literally talking to you guys about things that I've gone through, and I hope it resonates with somebody, with at least one person. If it just resonates with one person, that's all that matters to me. Because a lot of times we can get caught up in the semantics of things. Oh, what is our ICP? How do we speak to them? What's the language? This, yada, 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 yada. When in all actuality, the best thing you can do is speak to yourself, or speak to your younger self, and teach that person exactly what you know now that they didn't know, or that you learned that you didn't know a week ago, 2 weeks ago, a month ago. Because I guarantee you there's somebody else who's in that same exact position that can get that clarity a lot faster if you just put that message out there. So that's essentially what this video is today. Hopefully you got some value out of it. This was not anything that was super specific, but I feel like this is something that's very powerful that can really, really make that change for you, whether it's in business, whether it's in relationships, whether it's in health, whether it's in whatever area of your life that you find yourself kind of, I wouldn't say struggling in, but you find yourself making progress, and then right after you make that progress, something happens to where you find yourself repeating an old pattern, right? Just know that it's happening for a reason. Don't get caught up in the pattern itself. Be able to identify, okay, dang, I'm in a pattern. Let me step out of it real quick, analyze it, and start to break it down and dissect it. So with all that being said, I will catch you guys in the next one. Stay tuned.